Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 13th day of September 2023. Hey, 21 degrees and sunny right here in Brisbane, and it's looking wonderful. It's going to be a great day today. Best time of the year in Brisbane, I'd say. Neither too hot, not too cold. Wet. It has been a little bit nippy in the last couple of days. Well, right now, let's get on with the news. The first is the man has been injured in a shooting in Sydney's southwest estuary. So these are the bullet marks on the thing, and we will see how the news folds as that has come to hand. And the police are on the site with the investigations. Well, right, let's go to Qantas. Well, Alan Joyce is gone, and the first day on the job for the new COO. How did that turn out to be?
It's a leadership shake-up of minimal proportions faced with the same colossal challenges.
Qantas and the board need to restore trust in the organisation. It's a good opportunity for the new CEO to take action.
The former Qantas CFO, now first ever female CEO, has promised a new day for the Spirit of Australia.
Our job is to get the balance right between looking after our customers, you, our people, and the business itself.
But tipping the scales are a host of outstanding issues.
There has been quite a bit of reputational damage, so the board has to respond to that and really answer to shareholders what is going to happen with Mr Joyce's bonuses.
Pressure is growing on Chair Richard Goyder to claw back some of Alan Joyce's performance bonuses, linked to a regulatory investigation alleging Qantas sold thousands of tickets for flights even after it had cancelled them.
If the federal court action does find that there has been wrongdoing or oversight that hasn't been managed appropriately, then remuneration should be clawed back.
The former CEO is expected to collect about $22 million this financial year. His replacement appears to have brought some hope that she will get the balance of priorities right.
We know that the Australian public holds the role of the pilot in a great deal of respect. We're looking forward, and the first signs are encouraging that Vanessa acknowledges the role that we play.
The Spirit of Australia's reputation as one of this country's most respected companies now flies in the wind. And for a brand built on customer service, Vanessa Hudson's first priority must be restoring that confidence. Customers say making airfares more affordable could be a good place to start. Rachel Capizoni, ABC.
That may be a good place to start, as we know Qantas did so many things that has caused angst within many of its customers, including the scraping of many frequent flyer points if they were not used up in a timely manner. Well, right now we're moving on. Let's go to the Western Australia news.
Premier has vowed to introduce a suite of changes to tackle the scourge of domestic violence in Western Australia after a spate of recent deaths. Roger Cook will establish a special task force to advise the government, led by Noongar woman Colleen Hayward and the head of the Premier's Department, Emily Roper. He's expecting a report from them within 6 months. That task force will create a lived experience advisory group to hear from survivors about how to address the issue. Roger Cook will also ban serious family and domestic violence offenders from owning guns as part of sweeping changes to the Firearms Act. But he's warned there's no overnight fix.
An urgent summit to address a problem with no easy fix. Politicians and police met survivors last month and the family members left behind.
We have been targeted as women and children. Enough is enough.
The government says it's heard the message loud and clear.
We saw their pain. We were able to witness their trauma.
committing to establish an advisory group of people with lived experience of DV.
They are the ones who understand and witness and experience the build-up of the controls, the threats of violence, the actual acts of violence, and they're the ones that have the insights.
Setting up the Lived Experience Advisory Body will be the first job of the separate new Family and Domestic Violence Task Force. Given 6 months to take urgent action, the task force will be co-chaired by Professor Colleen Hayward and the Director-General of the Department of Premier and Cabinet, Emily Roper.
We were both really pleased to hear that it's at that high level as well, which is so critical because you need that in authorising environment. So I think there's a lot of pressure on the government, as in there's going to be all eyes on that task force.
It is pleasing that the government have put such a clear time frame around it so that we say, look, we've got a piece of work that we've got to get on with urgently.
The government also revealing proposed reforms to the Firearms Act will see not only those convicted of serious violent offences stripped of their guns, but also anyone subject to a violence restraining order. There's about 1,000 Western Australians currently subject to a VRO who also hold a gun licence, but plans to apply the legislation retrospectively will see them disqualified too. James Carmody, ABC News.
I just don't understand the need for just an ordinary person to have a gun. Right, if you are with a special permit, you could be allowed to have a gun, but I think it's time that law needs to be changed. Just not anyone should be able to have or possess a gun. That's my take on that. All right, high school teaching degrees to be made free in Victoria after a lot of protest.
After protests at Parliament, letters to the Premier and full-page newspaper ads, today a plan to combat teacher shortages.
The government will provide them with a full scholarship to cover every single dollar of their HECS debt.
The scholarships will be available to students studying to become high school teachers, but only if they teach in government schools for 2 years.
There's no doubt that teachers are frustrated by the fact that we've been asking the government to do something, to take action for longer than 12 months.
There are currently nearly 2,000 teacher jobs that are yet to be filled. The new scholarships will benefit around 4,000 people from next year. Students will get $18,000 for an undergraduate degree or $9,000 for a postgrad.
Half the money is paid during your undergraduate years and the other half is paid at the conclusion of your 2 years of state school service.
But primary school teachers will miss out. And the union argues new payments are needed to retain the 40% of teachers who leave the job within 5 years.
We can't afford to lose more teachers who are already there.
This $230 million will not go anywhere near what's needed to address the system-wide problems in education, including primary schools.
We have added twice the number of new teachers in the last 2 years than any other state.
The government hopes these scholarships will also attract teachers from interstate and overseas. Incentives of up to $50,000 will be available to encourage them to take up positions at rural and hard-to-staff campuses, including at specialist schools.
Rural and regional Victoria have been struggling for a considerable period of time and pre-COVID as well.
But schools will have to wait until at least 2026 for these new teachers to be in the classroom. Bridget Rollison, ABC News.
And that is good news because teachers are really, really needed. Right now, let's go to Tasmania.
My name's Katana Mansley and I'm a proud Palawa woman.
And the
My cultural connection to country really started here at Pirikitna, Risdon Cove.
Katana is passionate about bush food and has established an Indigenous catering company.
The wattle seed really brings that kind of nutty flavour.
She feels one of the big issues facing young First Nations people is maintaining their culture.
Making sure that they're not being assimilated in this colonised world and really connecting them back to their roots.
She doesn't want a voice to Parliament as part of her future.
The only outcome that we should be striving for is to have seats in Parliament, not advisors out of Parliament.
Young people make up more than half of Australia's First Nations population. The referendum will impact more heavily on that younger generation who will naturally have to live with the results for longer.
My name is Aria Ritz and I am a Palawa woman from the north of Tasmania. My mum was adopted, so I grew up in a very loving but very white family and only just sort of connected with community in the last 5 years.
Aria gives talks about her experiences growing up.
My early education and how I didn't sort of have a culturally safe environment, and how I was taught that Truganini was the last Aboriginal person.
She's been accepted to study law at university next year, but she's concerned other First Nations people are missing out on higher education.
I think that that's quite hard to access, especially in the sort of more disadvantaged areas.
While she feels the voice to Parliament has flaws, she'll be voting yes.
I would prefer treaty than voice. It's a good stepping stone in closing the gap.
My name is Tianji Brown and I'm a Tasmanian Aboriginal man, but I'm also a Queensland Aboriginal man. My personal understanding is being out on country and talking to the trees and talking to the country itself.
And Tianji Brown likes to share that culture with others.
Just sitting underneath the octopus tree, I just want to tell people about this because it's one of the elder trees.
But the 29-year-old is worried young First Nations people are finding it harder to practice their culture.
We don't want to lose the information from the elders because they're getting on.
And rather than a voice to Parliament, Tianji would like to see a more radical change to Australia's political system.
A republic. A republic where we can have a clean slate, and it's like we don't need to have associations to the horribly racist 1991 white Australia policies.
Young First Nations people sharing their hopes for the future. Fiona Blackwood, ABC News.
So there you go. The youngsters have voiced their voice. Well, there you are. But, so not everyone is in favour of the yes vote. So, there are points and they've got some points. And I don't know, you make the decision. But the point that everyone's saying is that in this day and age, now we are where we are. Past is past, that cannot be undone. We can try and heal. The healing process is happening. But in moving forward, everyone should be treated the same. Absolutely the same. Everyone should have the same opportunity. Everyone should have the same rights. Everyone should have the same obligations as well. So there you are. That's my take on it. Right now, our finishing off segment today with Alan Carter on the finance.
We've got two surveys of consumer sentiment today. The weekly one from ANZ and Roy Morgan, which fell 1.1 points, and the monthly one from Westpac and the Melbourne Institute, down 1.5%. But however you look at it, consumer sentiment is in the dunny. It's as low as it was in the pandemic and the GFC. But the dog that hasn't barked, to mix metaphors, is consumer spending. It's still upstairs, although that's partly because of immigration. So real consumer spending per capita is down a bit, but nowhere near as much as consumer sentiment or disposable income per capita, which is the red line on top. So economists are all wondering when or whether Aussie consumers will crack and cut spending in a big way, perhaps enough to cause a recession. Here's the reason they haven't cracked yet, on average. It's savings. That big burst of income in the pandemic came from the government and it went into the bank. And while it's been eaten into a bit, it's mostly still there. Borrowers are in trouble because of the rate hikes, but everyone else has a big savings buffer. And the tension between those two things will decide what happens to the economy. The share market was flat today and fairly uninteresting. The foreign exchange market was the same. Global markets mostly went up. And on commodity markets, iron ore and base metals went up. Oil was flat and gold went down. And that's finance.
And thanks, Ellen, for that very, comprehensive report there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before we finish up, time to take a look at functions and events. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for you in this segment. Hey, it's been wonderful having your company on this 13th day of September 2023, 21 degrees and sunny in Brisbane. As we finish off with the show, until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us.